My friends, I give you the greatest backfiring in cancel culture history, where woke leftists tried to get a woman fired because of 10-year-old tweets, resulting in their own publication losing a 7-figure ad deal. Let me slow this down and start from the beginning. We have the story from the Daily Beast. Beauty brand Ulta pulls teen Vogue ads over new editor-in-chief's old racist tweets. You hate to see it. The suffering of these poor media institutions that just want to write a smear piece about you and make you seem like a villain so they can enrage their tribal allies and make more money. All right, our story begins, my friend, the other day where I covered this. There was a woman who I believe is a corrupt reporter who worked for Axios. She was covering the Biden campaign, started dating their PR guy, or spokesperson, I guess. And then when he got a job in the Biden administration, this woman she's dating this guy, claiming it's not a conflict of interest, but you literally can't be a journalist dating the administration you're supposed to be covering. She's corrupt. Now, in 2019, they pulled up tweets of hers from 2011 when she was like 17 years old, and she said some offensive things about Asians. She apologized and deleted these posts. You know what? I respect her for it. Fine, you said mean, nasty things. You got rid of them. Don't be mean and nasty, all right? I can accept an apology and we can all move on because we're mature adults. But then she was rewarded for her corrupt behavior working at Axios, given the role of editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar, Teen Vogue is supposed to be a fashion magazine, but for some reason they praise socialism and Karl Marx. It's a very strange magazine, but sure, whatever, I guess. Well, around 20 or so individuals who work for this company wrote a scathing letter saying, how could this have happened? You're hiring a bigot. This corrupt journalist from Axios didn't pass the purity test. And now Ulta is pulling ads from Teen Vogue. So the journalists, so we call them air quote journalists, who wrote this scathing letter angry at the hiring of the editor-in-chief, just sunk 7 figures from their own company. They're canceling themselves, ladies and gentlemen. This is amazing. It's one thing when you're like, that dude who works for that company should be fired, and he gets fired. It's one thing when you're like, look at the dude who works for Fox, take away his advertisements, and they take away his advertisements. It's another thing when you're like, I work for this company and I don't like this lady, so they take away your revenue stream. What's going to happen? They're going to get fired. Why? It's not going to be fired because they sent this letter. They're going to get laid off. They're going to lose their jobs because they have no money. Wow. This is amazing. Let's read this from the Daily Beast. They say the ad campaign worth 7 figures is on pause following internal concerns over new top editor Alexi McCammon's past tweets. Daily Beast reports a major advertiser for Teen Vogue, it's hilarious, has paused its campaign with the publication following internal uproar over the new editor-in-chief's decade-old racist tweets about Asians. Popular cosmetics and skincare retailer Ulta Beauty said in a statement to the Daily Beast on Wednesday that it is halting its current advertising campaign with the Condé Nast-owned publication. According to people familiar with the situation, the deal was worth 7 figures. They say, diversity and inclusion are core values at Ulta Beauty and always have been, a company spokesperson said. Our current spend with Teen Vogue is paused as we work with Condé Nast to evaluate the situation and determine next steps regarding our partnership. While it appears Ulta is the only advertiser to have thus far taken action over the controversy, concern over the fallout was raised at a high-level Condé Nast sales meeting this week. Ulta has been sensitive to criticism of its handling of racial issues after several high-profile public allegations of racial profiling and a lack of diversity over the past several years. My friends, let me take this opportunity to let you know that we here at Timcast Media, we're a minority-owned company. And that's a fact. It literally is a fact. So there you go. All right. So here's what they say. Over the past several days, Condé Nast, I was mostly kidding about that. Condé Nast has been flooded with criticism and debate over the selection of Alexi McCammon as Teen Vogue's new editor-in-chief. The 27-year-old reporter was viewed in political journalism circles as a rising star for her coverage of the Trump White House and the 2020 election, which garnered her an award from the National Association of Black Journalists and an on-air contributor gig with MSNBC. I'll also point out, one of my documentaries has an honorable mention from it was a finalist for the National Association of Black Journalists Awards. It wasn't the winner, but we got this like special card. They liked the work we did. But ultimately, following Condé's announcement of its new top editor, critics resurfaced old tweets from 2011 in which a then college-aged McCammond, who is black, used racist stereotypes about Asian people. I'm not going to read what she said. This is YouTube. McCammond had previously apologized for the posts when they first surfaced in 2019, saying she was deeply sorry and that the social media posts do not reflect my views or who I am today. You're going to make me defend her. She apologized. Thank you, Alexi. Have a nice day. But she also engaged in unethical journalism, dating a guy in the Biden administration when she was covering the Biden administration, although she claimed she wasn't, but she was. Sorry. This person should not be rewarded. This person should be terminated. Okay. A violation of journalistic ethics. Or, I mean, honestly, it was a scandal. I don't think I would condemn her to a life of misery simply because she did something bad this one time. When she was young and she said offensive things, that one gets a freebie. That's a free pass, okay? No, get out of here. Young people say dumb things. She apologized. Move on. As for the unethical behavior between her and the Biden administration, I think, okay, you get a warning. You get a warning, all right? Don't do this stuff again. And I tend to be forgiving. So now I got to defend this chick, this woman. She's being attacked by the woke. She herself is working for a woke publication. She hates Donald Trump and she's being eaten alive. All right. The left is going to continue eating themselves. Obama called it a circular firing squad, and so be it. People are terrified to speak up and speak out, and there's a big problem. But in the end, they think it's going to benefit them. It's not. They say, according to a person familiar with the matter, McCammond has been meeting one-on-one with staff individually to apologize and discuss moving forward, and is planning a virtual roundtable on Clubhouse with several Asian American teen Vogue writers about issues facing the Asians in America. Facing the Asians? After the publication of this story, McCammond posted to Twitter a lengthy note addressed to her new colleagues. And following this week's news of an internal uproar over her old tweets, McCammond received support from high-profile media figures like MSNBC host Chris Hayes, NBC Peacock's Mehdi Hassan, who both argued the tweets from someone's teenage years should not count against them professionally as adults. You know, I want to say I agree with Chris Hayes and Mehdi Hassan, but I'm willing to bet they will flip 180 when it's a conservative or a Republican who has nasty old tweets. They'll scream and spit and yowl about any new Republican. They will condemn Marjorie Taylor Greene because 3 or 4 years ago, she posted something dumb. Now they'll say, but she was an adult woman. No. Marjorie Taylor Greene apologized for saying dumb things. I respect it and I have to accept it. We're supposed to be good people who are figuring out how to work together and compromise. Alexi Hammond apologized for these posts and they should not be held against her. Her journalistic career, that should be held against her, but I'm still willing to give a warning and say, okay, fine. I don't think she should be rewarded for what she did. Maybe, like I said, a warning. But here we are, and this is what we get. I don't like this drama world of screaming in people's faces. And I think really what's going on with McCammond, it's an opportunity for people to complain. That's it. You reap what you sow. You see, these news organizations, they're not really news organizations, but these media outlets thrive on rage bait drama. They hire people who love rage bait drama. It is the bread and butter of what they do. You see, they thought they could wield the one ring. You can't, no one can. You see, what happens is they decide we're going to make money. How are we going to do it? Well, no one needs news anymore because we have instant transmission and social media. They need comforting lies. They need rage bait, clickbait, drama content. So they hire people who are drama queens. These people who complain about other people, and it's all they do. They're hoping that there will be some shock content drama that will generate clicks because people are more interested in the real housewives and the real YouTubers of Middle Maryland or whatever. They want to write stories about me and the stupid things that people claim because it's drama. Because that's what people want, I guess. But guess what? When you hire people who live for drama, what do you think's going to happen when the drama comes home to roost? That's why I say it's like the One Ring. It's extremely powerful. Sure, it made Frodo turn invisible. I'm assuming you're fans of Lord of the Rings. And that works in his favor at some point, able to escape certain things. But he can't wield the power. It corrupts you. It corrupts your institutions. It destroys them. And so the Daily Beast brings on these people who thrive on drama. And what happens? They start eating the organization from the inside out. It is corrupting them. They're turning into wraiths. Well, it's what you get. They say her detractors, who flooded the comments section on Teen Vogue social media platforms, said the tweets couldn't be ignored amid a national conversation about racist harassment aimed at Asian Americans, as well as a reported spike in hate crimes against Asians in the U.S., which, yes, I agree is a problem. But it was 10 years ago, man. They really want to burn people to the ground. Well, you know what? I'm sure each and every conservative is sitting back, chopping off a cigar, whatever it's called, crimping the end of that cigar, puffing and saying, sucks for you. Because the conservatives are the ones who are saying, stop it. They don't want to let it go, though. Additionally, within Teen Vogue, staffers have raised concerns about the decision to hire McCammond. And according to multiple people familiar with the matter, former editor-in-chief Lindsay Peoples-Wagner, who departed earlier this year for a top role at New York Magazine's The Cut, privately expressed opposition to McCammond as her successor and did not include her on a list of recommended replacements shared with Condé Nast Chief Content Officer Anna Wintour. All right, I don't care all that much about this. You get the point, right? Let me show you where we're at. From Vox.com, that's VOX. Republicans are trying to outlaw wokeness, literally. They're trying to outlaw wokeness? Oh, how the right is trying to cancel left-wing speech. Why is wokeness left-wing? I mean, wokeness is just identitarianism. I guess it's postmodernism or whatever. Sure, fine. But there are people on the right who hold similar identitarian views. Call it whatever you want. Vox says, we're in the midst of something like a moral panic over so-called cancel culture. As I noted a few months ago, there's a rising contingent of thinkers on the left and the right who believe a culture of censoriousness has engulfed intellectual life over the last few years. To state the obvious up front, it's a genuine problem, although I don't think it's quite the existential threat some have suggested, and I consider it a debate not so much about the right to speak, but rather about where to draw the boundaries and what sorts of social sanctions are permissible when those boundaries are transgressed. But when the topic is broached, it's almost always framed as a left-wing problem. This is somewhat misleading. The left, of course, has its excesses, and there are very real efforts to not only suppress unpopular speech, but also punish violations of new orthodoxies. There is, however, an emergent cancel culture on the right, one that is every bit as pernicious as what we're seeing on the left, only it hasn't received nearly as much attention. Whereas the left is mostly exercising cultural power on campuses and social media, the right is introducing legislation here, and here, intended to stifle left-wing speech in public schools across the country. We'll read this, and I absolutely think it's worth pointing out because I do think the right has their version of cancel culture. I think many on the right have tried engaging in cancel culture, and many of them complain because they don't control the cultural institutions. But given the power, they probably would still do it. But let's be real here. It is not a problem of the right. It is the exception. On the left, it's the rule. I just showed you. Teen Vogue is literally canceling itself. They're losing. They're at risk of losing a 7-figure advertising deal because their employees are complaining about their own employees. So yeah, the cancel culture stuff on the left is so egregious, they're literally imploding. I do not see Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire, being complained about by his staff because of his past tweets, for which he has many. Ben Shapiro has a lot of controversial tweets or statements. Doesn't happen on the right. Now, there may be legislation and there are efforts, but like I said, I think most people who are giving you a fair assessment will say on the right, it is the exception. Of course, it happens, but it's not standard. It's not typical of conservatives. And on the left, it's the rule, not the exception. The exception is like Jacobin magazine defending free speech. That's why I give respect to Jacobin. I always try to give respect where it is due. Jacobin, for those that aren't familiar, is it's like the preeminent socialist magazine. They have many, many articles defending free speech for the most abhorrent individuals. And they're correct when they say, if we allow them, the establishment powers, to censor those we don't like, we are next. Think about it this way. If you're on the left, if you're a progressive, you should be looking at the fringe elements of the right effectively as a canary in the coal mine or as kind of a barrier. They need the outrage to justify the censorship, and they use the right to do it. Once they do, they start banning a bunch of progressives. Many progressive YouTube channels have recently got demonetized or outright shut down. And that's what Jacobin was warning about. And that's what I've been warning about. And Glenn Greenwald's been warning about. And Matt Taibbi and Mike Tracy and many other people who are moderately liberal individuals, some progressive, who are telling you, start defending free speech. Conservatives, of course, are absolutely about this. And there's been big issues pertaining to religious freedom. So the First Amendment is not a new battle for conservatives. Too many on the left just don't seem to get it. Well, let's read now and see what Vox says. They say, to highlight one example, a recent bill in Iowa has proposed banning materials derived from the New York Times 1619 Project from being taught at community colleges and other schools under the control of the state's Board of Regents. Whatever you think of the 1619 Project, and it's not without problems, that's an extraordinary step in an outright attack on academic freedom. Well, I will say, I don't trust Vox.com. I'm sorry. And so take it all with a grain of salt. But I do not believe the 1619 Project should be banned from being taught. I believe they absolutely should teach from it, but that requires an objective and academic view which challenges its notions, its conclusions, and seeks to cite the claims made in the project. As Vox mentions, it's not without problems. Many historians have come out and said it's BS. Teaching it, I still think, you're supposed to be a critical observer. Now, depends on what the bill from Iowa actually says. And this is where I think things can get muddy, because Vox might not actually give you the full details, but let's just read. We'll read here. They say, an act providing for the reduction of certain funding and budgets for public schools, community colleges, and regents institutions following the use of specified curriculum and including effective date, yada, yada, yada. So let's see. Maybe I can just read the conclusion. Okay, so it's not particularly long, but they say the bill includes findings of the General Assembly that the recently developed United States history curriculum derived from a project by the New York Times known as the 1619 Project attempts to deny or obfuscate the fundamental principles upon which the U.S. was founded, and that the General Assembly has a strong interest in promoting an accurate account of this nation's history through public schools and forming young people into knowledgeable and patriotic citizens. The bill amends provisions governing the educational program established by the State Board of Education to prohibit a school from utilizing any United States history curriculum in whole or in part that is derived from the 1619 Project. Well, upon reading it, I will say you can't do it. It's a violation of the First Amendment. The state should not be going in and saying you can or can't teach certain articles from newspapers. There's an interesting argument about, religion in that regard. And there's an informal separation of church and state. But perhaps if we're going to be talking about what we can or can't teach, there's a real argument here. And I'm very pro free speech. But the issue is whether or not they solely teach the 1619 Project, are teaching children accurate things, and whether or not our schools, which are publicly funded, must adhere to a unified curriculum. What I mean by that, or I should say a unanimous curriculum. What I mean by that is, who gives the schools the right to teach certain things? Now, I do think if parents have an issue with it, they should be able to take their kids out. But there's the problem. No school choice. If we had school choice, for those that are familiar, where you get a voucher, for instance, voucher programs, take your kid out of the school, send them to a different school, then by all means. But if we're dealing with kids have no choice but to be here, then there must be an agreed upon curriculum, in which case I actually don't think it is a violation of free speech for the government to ban the 1619 Project as a curriculum. I'm not a fan of it outright, though. My concern is that it's a slippery slope, which will lead to very bad things. So while I completely disagree with teaching the 1619 Project, I think the actual solution is not to ban it. The actual solution is school choice. The schools should be allowed to teach whatever. And in that regard, I don't see why schools can't teach religion. I really don't. The issue, I suppose, is creating a fair and balanced system where you're actually teaching kids to be critical thinkers and teaching them, here's the 1619 Project, but here's the critical view of it as well. If they teach it as fact, we've got a problem because then our schools aren't educating our children. And so the conundrum here isn't so much free speech, Vox. I believe you're incorrect. The conundrum is we are paying the government. We have no choice in the matter, and our kids have to be here. Well, then I demand an accurate representation of history. There's a problem. Evolution, creationism, that whole legal battle. What do? The answer is not suppression of speech. The answer is school choice. And that means if there's religious parents who want their kids to learn creationism, which was an old fight from decades ago, they move their kid to that school. Private schools exist. You can do this, but then you're still paying taxes for the public schools. Give the families vouchers, and that problem is solved. Not a free speech issue. They're going to say, Jeffrey Sachs, professor of politics at Acadia University, calls it the new war on woke. And it's a disturbing escalation in the spiraling speech wars. I reached out to Sachs on one of the more clear-headed voices in the debate to talk about the latest developments and the dangers of inviting the government into the censorship business. That's true, though. The government should not be in the censorship business. I do think there is an issue here, and I believe you're going to see Republicans wanting this power as well. Donald Trump and Candace Owens had previously said people should go to jail for burning the American flag. Wrong. No. You can burn it so long as it's your property and it's done safely. You want to burn something, I guess. My only real, like when it comes to burning the American flag, first of all, I think it's disgusting. I'm not a fan. I love this country and I love the American flag, and I would not burn American flag. But if someone has private property, what makes America great is that. It's a symbol of what makes this country great. Burning the flag is the ultimate representation of true American freedom. Watch the Penn and Teller bit about the Constitution and the American flag. It's amazing. He says basically like we may burn the flag, but we do so as the ultimate symbol of the freedom that flag represents. So no, people have the right to express themselves in that way. I've heard it from Republicans and Trump supporters. People should go to jail for burning the American flag. That's wrong. And given the institutional authority, I think they would take away our right to express ourselves. So no, I err on the side of freedom for the individual. So I do not like the government, conservatives, anybody coming in and saying, you can't say this, you can't say that. The problem is the approach to cancel culture is not more cancel culture. Or I should say the solution to cancel culture is not to start canceling other people. Uncanceling is the solution. So let me put it this way, my friends. When we see like, with all due respect to Mike Cernovich, his approach has been cancel them back. Highlight what, James Gunn, for instance, offensive comedy. I don't think that's the right approach. I think you uncancel things. I think what you do is you find something left canceled like Pepe Le Pew or Dr. Seuss, and then you remake similar things. To be fair, however, I think the issue of cancel culture is it's a small fraction of fringe lunatics pushing things too far. Are there racist stereotypes in Dr. Seuss books? I believe, yes, in one. Should it be discontinued? My personal opinion is no. However, I do think, because it's Dr. Seuss, people take it too far. I do think there are certain cultural things we do eventually stop doing, and I have no problem with it. I remember Family Guy announced they weren't going to do gay jokes anymore. And a bunch of people are like, oh, come on, don't be silly. And I thought, if Seth MacFarlane doesn't want to do jokes about this subject anymore, I don't care. Maybe we've decided we won't make, this into make fun of it. That's fine if you don't want to do it. But at the same time, the problem is Family Guy still does racist jokes. So you can't pick and choose, man. If you want to recognize some things are funny and you want to make jokes, you do it. Dave Chappelle did a stereotype of a Chinese person on his special on Netflix, and that went over swimmingly, I guess. So ultimately, freedom is the answer. If someone decides not to make a joke, I don't care. If they're being hypocrites, I'll point them out. If someone doesn't want to publish a book, well, so be it. If you think that book should still be published, make something akin to it, and you draw the pictures and say, we're not giving this up. We're gonna remake it. So the opposite of cancel culture is, I'll tell you this. You've got cancel culture and anti-cancel culture. No, the opposite of cancel culture is not anti-cancel culture. The opposite of cancel culture is uncancel culture. They put it that way. Well, I don't know, whatever. You get the point. They want to claim it's the right doing it, a war on wokeness, but please spare me. They're canceling themselves. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I will see you all then.